Welcome to The Explainer, where we love digging into complex history and making it make sense. And today, well, we've got a weird one. We're going to talk about one of history's most unusual political tools, literally throwing people out of windows. Yeah, we're diving into the Defenestrations of Prague, and you won't believe how this bizarre act repeatedly changed the course of European history.
All right, let's jump right into the action. The date is May 23rd, 1618. The place is Prague Castle in Prague, and let me tell you, tensions are about to hit a literal breaking point.
So picture this. In one corner, you've got a group of absolutely furious Protestant nobles. And in the other, two Catholic royal governors sent there by the Holy Roman Emperor. The Protestants feel like their religious freedoms are being totally trampled on, and after a really nasty argument, they decide, you know what? Talking is over.
So what do? They grab the two governors, Willem Slavata and Jaroslav Božita, and, oh yeah, their poor secretary, Philip Fabricius, gets caught up in it too, and they throw them straight out of a third-story window. We are talking about a 70-foot drop. That's about 21 meters. That's not something you just walk away from.
But here's where the story gets really, really weird. They all survived. And the reason why they survived? Well, that instantly became a huge deal. The Catholics insisted it was a divine miracle. Angels, or even the Virgin Mary herself, must have swooped in to save them. The Protestants, though, they had shall we say, a less divine explanation. They claimed the men just got lucky and landed in a giant pile of horse manure. And get this, as kind of a reward for his traumatic experience, and maybe with a bit of a sense of humor, the emperor later gave the secretary, Philip Fabricius, a title. His new name? Baron von Hohenfall, which literally translates to Baron of High Fall. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. He definitely earned that one.
Now, you might be thinking this was just some crazy one-off, spur-of-the-moment idea. But no, for the people of Prague, throwing officials out of windows was, believe it or not, kind of becoming a political tradition.
In fact, the act is so specific, it has its very own name, Defenestration. It literally just means out of the window. And it's thought that the first time it was ever used in English was to describe this exact event in 1618. It was a brutal, for sure, but an established way to protest in Bohemia. So to really get a grip on this, we've got to look back, because Prague actually had 3 of these major defenestrations. And what's wild is that each one had a completely different result. This just shows you how unpredictable history can be, right? The first one, back in 1419, was led by the Hussites, who were followers of the reformer Jan Hus. They were protesting about some prisoners, and boom! It kicked off the Hussite Wars, which were absolutely brutal and lasted for 2 decades. But then, in 1483, it happens again. Another coup, another defenestration. This time, instead of war, it actually forces a compromise that leads to over 30 years of religious peace. Which brings us to 1618, when the same act lit the fuse for the 30 Years' War, one of the most devastating conflicts Europe has ever seen.
So, the big question is, how did this one incident in 1618 manage to set the entire continent on fire? Let's break it down.
Okay, so at its heart, this whole mess was about a broken promise. The Protestants in Bohemia had been guaranteed religious freedom in this document called the Letter of Majesty. Simple enough, right? But the new king, Ferdinand II, was a very devout Catholic, and he had zero interest in honoring that agreement. When he ordered them to stop building Protestant chapels, the Bohemian nobles saw it as the ultimate betrayal. And this is the spot. These are the actual windows in Hussite Castle where it all happened. It's pretty powerful, right? A reminder that these huge, history-changing events happened in real places that you can still go and see today. The guy leading the protest, Count von Thurn, he didn't see this as murder at all. He basically framed it as an act of political survival. He said, were we to keep these men alive, then we would lose the Letter of Majesty and our religion. So, in his mind, these governors were symbols of tyranny, and letting them live meant the death of their freedom.
The rebellion that kicked off was, well, it was crushed, and fast. Within just a couple of years, the Protestant forces were totally defeated. The Habsburgs took back control, and the punishment was severe. They executed 27 of the Protestant leaders right in Prague's Old Town Square. A very grim, very public warning.
So here's the key takeaway. The Defenestration of Prague wasn't just the start of some local revolt. Nope. It was the spark. It was the thing that ignited the 30 Years' War, a conflict that would eventually pull in nations from all over Europe and just devastate the continent for 3 decades.
And you'd think that would be the end of Prague's window-based political commentary. But unbelievably, this whole defenestration thing became so much a part of the city's identity that it was even used to frame a political death centuries later, right in the middle of the Cold War.
This is Jan Masaryk. He was the foreign minister of Czechoslovakia. And in 1948, just as the communists were taking over, he was found dead on the pavement right below his bathroom window. And ever since, the whole nation has been haunted by one question. Did he jump or was he pushed?
And the mystery has just gotten deeper and deeper over the years. So, back in 1948, the official communist report said suicide. Case closed. But after communism fell, a new investigation in 2004 concluded, no, it was murder. Then, more recent research threw that into question, suggesting a whole different scenario. And just a few years ago, the case was shelved again. We still don't know what really happened in what some people call the Fourth Defenestration of Prague. So, from a medieval revolt to a Cold War mystery, the story of Prague's defenestrations is just a wild reminder of how a really specific form of political violence can get woven into a nation's story. And it leaves us with this fascinating and honestly kind of unsettling question. When does a shocking act of protest cross the line and become a dark political tradition?